blessed unity with the L-O-V-E. Love is a solution, so set your love free with the L-O-V-E. Further evolution and blessed unity.
Good morning, self-lovers. Welcome back to the Self-Love Show. I'm your co-host, Dawn Light, with my beautiful sister here, Trish Wright. We love hosting the Self-Love Show for you on the weekly. Such a blessing. We're now 4 years deep, and it's such an amazing experience together to grow rich in love every week. And so in case you don't know, we're on all the platforms. So go explore the podcast areas. YouTube has an amazing plethora of videos over the 4 years, and we're just grateful on every level to keep giving the gift of the Self-Love Show. And so, and we want to just thank our help on the back end that always helps us. We love you and appreciate you, and we appreciate our viewers. And so we want to honor you. If you're new, welcome, welcome. And for those that keep tuning in, we're so thankful for you. And we have great guests today. So our guest today is Leslie Davis, and I'm going to read her beautiful introduction real quickly. Let me get to it. And so often we are busy talking, right? Talking to anyone who will stand still long enough for us to start talking to them. We watch the eyes glaze over, feel the tension build as the unwitting person struggles to find a way to escape. And we keep searching for that one person who will listen to us without wanting to escape. That one person who is available 24/7 and 365 days a year, 366 in leap years. That one person who doesn't care if we are carrying on about the same thing we have carried on about at least 1,000 times before. It is time to meet the one person who always has your back, your BFFITWWW. So Leslie Lindsey Davis, inspirational speaker and best-selling author of You Can Eat Love, You Can't Eat Love, leaves audiences transformed by her powerful message of embracing emotions, cultivating self-love, and building healthy relationships. With her warmth, authenticity, and expertise, Leslie guides individuals on a journey of personal growth and self-discovery. She has the ability to connect with people who are struggling with loving themselves and setting personal boundaries. Through her humor and stories, audiences are given the tools to make lasting positive changes. Leslie has sold over 8,000 books, appeared on nearly 100 podcasts, participated in 10 online summits, and delivered empowering talks at conferences in women's shelters to international congregations. So welcome, Leslie. We're super excited to have you with us.
Well, Dawn, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. But you know what? Before we do anything else, I have to tell you, I could listen to your intro, the music, the song, whatever, over and over again. And I keep waiting for the next verse.
Aww.
And I was trying to figure out how I could get Alexa to play it for me.
Oh.
Because it is so amazing and inspirational, and it has such a good beat to it. I need it for Alexa.
It's a great song.
It's called Love, L.O.V.E by the Goddess Alchemy Project. And I put it in the chat for all of you who have been wondering for all of this time.
Well, you know what? After we finish talking, I'm going to run out of here as fast as I can so I can get Alexa to play the whole thing for me.
And I encourage you to listen to the whole album. They're friends of ours and gave us permission to use the song on the show. And it's like such good music.
Oh, I'm always looking for something with a good beat to it.
Thank you for saying that.
Oh, that's so sweet. You know, our BFF.
ITWWW.
Tell us more.
Well, about 8 years ago, I ran into what I like to call an emotional tsunami, where, I was overcome by this ginormous tsunami, and I was slammed down to the depths of the Marianas Trench and thought, I'm never going to survive. And so I made a decision or I had a realization I could either continue going in the direction that I was going, or I could decide that I was going to get healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. And for whatever crazy, insane reason, I decided I was going to get healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. And along the way, I discovered, as you read in the intro, that I was desperate for people to hear me. I was so desperate for somebody to listen to what it was that I was saying that, as one of my kids said one time, you would talk to a fly on a wall if it would stand still long enough.
Hmm.
And one day I was struggling with trying to keep my head above water. You know, the waves were raging and crashing and all this. And I was struggling to keep my head above water. And I grabbed a pen and a piece of paper and I started writing all that noise that was happening in my head. And I started asking myself questions and I started answering those questions. And when I finished, when I was empty, I was like, oh, I feel so much better. So the next time it happened, I did the same thing again. Now, I'm a slow learner sometimes, but what I finally understood was I was hearing myself. And the way that it became apparent to me is I was in the midst of a crowd and I was no longer feeling desperate for someone to listen to what it was that I had to say. Instead, I was able to sit very calmly and very quietly and listen to what somebody else was saying. I was able to ask inquisitive, curious questions. I was able to make empathetic comments and responses to what they were saying. I wasn't feeling the need to jump in and one up their story or hijack the meeting. You know, I'm sure you all know those people who love to hijack the meeting.
Yeah.
And when I left, I said, wow, something has changed. And what I suddenly realized, because, you know, there's all this talk going on all over the place about your BFF this and your BFF that and whatever. I said, the thing that changed is you discovered your very best friend in the whole wide world. And that person is available 365, 366 in leap years, days out of the year, 24/7, and does not get tired of listening to you go on and on for the millionth time about the same old thing. I said, you're on to something.
Yeah.
And I started telling other people, and this is what I wrote about in the book, You Can't Eat Love. I started telling other people, you know, have those written conversations with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Give empathy to yourself. Say those things to yourself that you want to hear. Because honestly, both of you ladies, if you were to give a script to someone that detailed everything, including body language, eye movement, facial expressions, vocal intonation, volume, et cetera, and they said everything to you exactly as you scripted it out, how would you really feel?
You wouldn't feel the way that you wanted because it's not, you want to be heard by yourself and you want to be met. You want authenticity. Like most people, or maybe I'll speak for myself. I don't know what you want specifically, but what I want is authenticity. I want integrity. I want people to be honest. And I can't give them a script.
Right. You want to be able to trust the words that are coming from their mouth. You want to be able to trust their expressions and their body language.
Yes.
And the way that we build that trust is we start with ourselves.
Yes.
And that was where I started. I started with trusting myself, hearing myself, believing myself, and understanding that what I had to say was important, was valuable. No, not necessarily to the rest of the world, but it was valuable to me.
Yes.
And truthfully, at the end of the day, it only matters if it's valuable to me, because I'm only in control of me. I'm not in control of anybody else, am I?
It's an illusion to believe we are.
And even in control of ourselves sometimes. There are so many elusive patterns and conditions that run like on the back end, like that we're just unconscious of. Like it's just not like we're not present to it. And it could be familial conditioning. It could be, cultural conditioning or local conditioning,
How about generational?
Absolutely. Like there's so much there it's kind of pervasive and invasive, these beliefs. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why we're in such like not just in the US, but globally, we're in such like a churning of trying to find more of our humanity, and really like touching at the things that have been running, the programs that have been running for so long that a lot of us don't want anymore because we want love and we want trust.
Well,
So
we want to be able to look in the mirror and believe the person that we see in the mirror, but
yeah,
more importantly, we want to love the person that we are seeing in the mirror. And I tell people, and I mentioned this in the book, and it's the truth. It took me a year to be able to look at myself in the mirror and say to myself, I love you, without tears pouring down my face, my eyes wanting to, run out of the room, leaving my body behind. That would have been a little bit weird, but that was how it felt.
yeah.
It took a year. Now, what does that say? What does that say about what I was taught? What does that say about what I believed? And I'm not the only person. I'm not the only person. I believe, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, Trish. I believe that right here, right now, we are in a moment in time where people are no longer accepting that in order to live a productive, safe life, that they need to deny their true selves, their true emotions, their true feelings, their true everything. Instead, I believe that people now are saying, you know what? I can feel sad. I can feel angry. I can feel all of these things without denying them. And I can still be a real functioning, productive component of the world. In fact, I can be even more productive because I am able to offer empathy and sympathy to the people around me.
Yes. Because you're able to do it for yourself.
Right.
One of the things that I didn't quite understand for many, many years is just that. I learned self-empathy through Love Coach Academy and Scott Katamas. And that was right around the pandemic. I had, just gotten out of a really mutually abusive relationship. And I hit some core traumas that I hadn't hit before, like ever, ever, ever before. And I just didn't understand. I mean, and now that I look back, now that I'm like understanding that I'm neurodivergent and like the world, I was like, oh yeah, well, that makes a whole lot of sense, Now that I look back, I was like, I don't actually, one more thing. Leslie, I had a relationship hero job where I was like a relationship coach, and they gave me really, really poor marks on empathy. They were like, you need to work on empathy. And I was like, how do you learn empathy? And that's what I set out to learn. And so the self-empathy tool really helped me understand how to like understand my thoughts and how they were connected to my feelings and how they were connected to the wants, needs, and desires that were just running. And I didn't know that. And then that's what stemmed me to like build my own strategies for self-empathy and get my needs met, while really looking at, wait, where did I get this belief? Whose voice is in my head? Is it my voice? Or is it Miss so-and-so from elementary school? Or is it my mom? Or is it my dad? Or is it social programming around who I can and can't be to fit in society? Am I thin enough? Am I smart enough? Am I wealthy enough? Like whatever the baloney things that we're taught to like, yeah, be able to look in the mirror and be like, oh, that's you. Look at you. You're doing good. Keep it up. Sometimes I wish I could reach through the screen and my hand would be like, and I could just reach over and like stroke Dawn's head and be like, you're doing a great job. How do you I just don't do it.
You can still do virtual high fives.
Yes. I love what you brought forward, Leslie, about the like dialoguing with yourself, because that's a tool that's shared amongst, in therapy and in my practice with my clients, like both things, mirror work and the inner counselor, we call it inner counselor work. And so it's you're dialoguing with the wisest part of yourself, your higher self, through that process and allowing those answers to bubble forward. And it's actually called automatic writing. Automatic writing was something I discovered like eons ago before I ever studied spiritual psychology or got into graduate school. And I had a really powerful impact even in my 20s. And I had a, I wasn't even 20. I was like, I think 19. And, the woman that taught it to me then, like, it was really transformational for me at that time in my life. And then for whatever reason, life happens, you get busy, whatever. And I kind of dropped the ball on keeping that up. And when I got into graduate school, it came back into my field. And I remember tuning in with it. And I remember my inner counselor being pissed at me about, like, it came through. It basically yelled at me in a way on the paper, like, where have you been? You know how to use this tool. Like, I was just like, oh my God. Like, I was floored that I was having that response come out of me. And then after that, it just became like, I even channeled a whole beautiful thing with my first year of graduate school that was all from automatic writing. And so it's really powerful work when you start to tune into yourself in this way and use your own ability to know that all the inner resources and all the wisdom, answers, solutions to your life are here inwardly.
Well, but the important thing, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, is that we need to be honest with ourselves.
Yes.
Need to not lie to ourselves. And what I came to understand is we are three people, me, myself, and I. Okay. Me and myself, they just want us to be happy, but I is seeing everything. And oftentimes when we deny what we are really feeling, what we are really thinking, well, then it sets off that tension and that inner battle because you're trying to fend off, trying to hold back the tide, put your finger in the dike of all that stuff that's building up. And I say to people, and sometimes people are shocked, but you know what? The information is very clear. We need to be honest with ourselves. And the example that I give is from my own personal life. A couple of years ago, I was really struggling, and I do my writing and stuff in the morning, and I was having a written conversation with myself. And I was saying, this is what's going on. And I was dancing all around the subject. And finally, I wrote, "Who are you lying to? I already sees all of this. God knows what you are thinking. So why are you lying? Why are you busy lying about this?" And I wrote all of that.
Mhm.
And finally, I took a deep breath and I wrote, "I am so angry right now. I wish this person would hurry up and die." And I went on and had this conversation with myself. And when I finished, I felt better because I was no longer lying. Now, that does sound extreme, but don't tell me people haven't had those kinds of thoughts, because they have. However, my point is, when we lie to ourselves about what we are really and truly feeling, then we are adding another layer of tension. We are adding another layer of, now, what is it that I really felt about that? Trying to keep all those stories straight. However, if we can be honest with ourselves about how we're feeling in a moment, I am so sad right now that this is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling as if I just really don't want to do anything other than, go to the store and get a giant bag of Ruffles barbecue potato chips and the largest French onion dip that they have. And I just want to sit here and I want to eat the whole thing while I watch some stupid show, because that's the only thing I know that's going to stop me from feeling how I'm feeling at this moment. When we lie to ourselves about our internal feeling, we set off that tension. When we set off that tension, it turns into other things. And oftentimes it turns into some kind of self-harming action, or it turns into some kind of self-harming thoughts, or it leads us into the road down the road of depression. And I believe if we can be brave enough to simply be honest. I'm not saying go out and tell all of your friends and family that this is what you're feeling. What I'm saying is grab that notebook, grab that pen, have that written conversation with yourself. And if the words that you put down are so scary, tear them up, set them on fire. If you need some matches, reach out to me. I'll mail some matches to you. Do something, but get those words out of your head, get those thoughts out of your head, get those feelings out of your head, and let yourself know, I hear what you're saying. I hear you. And I can only imagine why you're feeling that way. And of course you feel that way. Why wouldn't you?
Exactly. We have to validate our own feelings. Like we have to be that person. You know, one of the things that I contemplate a lot about social norms or social behaviors or like the way that we're taught to live in life. And I think a lot of the time, I think intentionally it was to like, you know, keep us safe. You know, these social norms are generally connected to laws of some kind. And, you know, social norms keep the social structure going. And this is how society is built. But I also think about how we've internalized these ways of being. And, you know, we're not allowed to be arrogant, right? We can't be like, oh, I'm the best, because that's just not enough. Like, that's too much. And then we can't be like, oh, like self-deprecating, and that's too little, right? And then there's the place between, we'll say, modesty and being humble, but always there on the side of humbleness, even though you're amazing, you know? And so it's like, when I'm thinking about being my best friend, when I look in the mirror, I'm thinking about, well, do I have the qualities of being my best friend? You know, do I have integrity? Am I keeping my truth, my words to myself? Like, am I keeping my promises? Am I, if I can't keep my promises, am I readjusting? You know, am I taking accountability for the harm that I'm causing myself or anybody else? Like, am I courageous enough to show up in space to literally just take a stand for being myself? And I think that we're not taught to do that, because that errs on the side of
Arrogance.
exactly. Well, that errs on the like thought of arrogance. But if you have a like what, how many people are on this, like in the US? I don't even know. I know that there's like over 8 billion people on the planet. Like, if everyone's walking around being like, no, these are my skills and qualities that I'm really good at, and these are my not so good ones, and I know other people have those ones, and I just want to like take accountability for my actions. I want to like be able to love you and love myself. We'd be kind of unstoppable, I think.
I agree. I agree. Because when I started understanding who I was in control of, and I stopped looking outside of myself for the affirmation, the acclamation, and the encouragement that I desperately needed,
Yeah.
then my soul started calming down. And I quit seeking in unhealthy places with unhealthy people for that which they were not able to give me. And instead, what started happening is I started getting curious about other people and started being able to give them without any expectation of any kind of return. I started being able to give them what I believed they were looking for. Now, when we give to others, we need to be very clear on our intentions. And oftentimes I would have to check my intention. Am I doing this because I have an expectation of getting something back? Am I doing this simply because I believe that this is what this person needs in the moment? Am I doing this because I believe that this is what society is dictating needs to be done? And as I check my intentions, then I can get clear with myself why I'm taking certain actions. Why is that important? Because when we do things out of an expectation of getting something back,
Mm.
then our intentions are not true and honest.
Mhm.
We have an expectation of receiving. And I don't know about you guys, but oftentimes we can go back to that whole scenario of giving the person the script. You feel as if whatever they give you back is false or fake, or, not honest, not honest. But when we can be clear about our intention, then we're not looking for something to come back. And then we're surprised and delighted when something does come back. And we say, oh, well, they really did enjoy that. They did appreciate that. Oh my goodness, that was so good. I will have to do that again. And we can simply be delighted that they were delighted, and not say, oh, of course they did whatever. No. Let's get clear about our intentions. And then you were mentioning about the emotions. For me personally, I did basically 2 emotions really well. One was anger and the other was shame. When I went on this journey of learning to love myself and everything, I had to figure out what emotions I was really feeling. I knew the names of emotions. I simply was not able to label my own personal emotions. And I think a lot of people are there. And Trish, you mentioned, whose voice is it that's talking? As I was uncovering the emotions and discovering, what it was I was feeling and things, oftentimes I would hear, well, you shouldn't be feeling that way, which is a topic for a whole different conversation. And I would have to ask myself, whose voice is it that I'm hearing? And now, and I tell people to do this, when those voices show up, tell them, go sit down in the corner, you've got this, or put them in a box, you've got this, sit on the box, keep them in the box. I have a client that I've worked with for over 2 years. She doesn't even know where the box is anymore. She put them, she lost the box. But let's be clear, let's be intentional, and let's be curious. Whose voice are we really hearing when we hear these thoughts?
Yeah. One of the things that I was appreciating that you just said is when we give to get. That's one of the linchpins or the keystones of codependency, of people-pleasing behaviors, is I'm going to give to you to get something in return, but I'm not going to tell you my agenda or my intention. It's like this unspoken agreement that you're not participating in. And the unfortunate part about that is that that's what we're taught is love, right? Love is contortion, self-abandonment. Just love is this thing that I'm
That
supposed
has a lot of conditions tied to it.
Mhm.
And so when we give to get, and I want to also make this very clear, is that I believe that people pleasing is a manipulation. It's essentially gaslighting reality for other people, because you're saying yes, and on the inside you're actually meaning no, and there's all these conditions and these like things that now come along with me saying yes that you don't know about, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another part about like talking about this indirect harm, self-harm bit, which is really awesome because last night's clinical psych lecture, my last lecture, was on self-harm. And it was really interesting to just really grind in and get down to that, these indirect self-harm behaviors like eating or drug addiction or alcohol or sex or drugs, rock and roll, like all of those things are purely emotional avoidance, because we're taught as the emotional coping strategy to avoid our emotions, whether we grew up with, like weird abusive mentors, or whether we had these things in our society. It's just like feelings are bad and wrong, we shouldn't have them. and so when we think about, like, when I'm thinking about it right now today, um that I'm thinking about indirect self-harm. Direct self-harm would be like, like cutting or hurting oneself, but the indirect is like it's a strategy to feel better. Like, this is what we do. We have strategies to feel better. Some of our strategies suck, like really bad. They suck. I had a lot of strategies that sucked. Anybody else?
Definitely.
That so when we're looking at these indirect self-harm is like oh, what am I doing and what is this for? Like, what am I trying to get this need met? Like, is it for safety? Is it to be seen or heard? Is it to really truly be safe in my body? And then we get to like really look at those places. So yeah, Leslie, I love the, be honest about your agenda, you know, and what's your intention, and really to like look at what's the underlying program. What am I avoiding here?
Mhm.
Is this strategy helpful for my life and my goals and the things that I want? And can I look at myself in the mirror after I've done these things? My emotional avoidance strategy to actually meet my needs. Damn, it's not working. Ah!
Well, and that's where it becomes really crazy. And I don't mean in a bad way, but when we start unraveling all these behaviors that we have, that we establish as coping mechanisms in order to live our day-to-day life, then we start wondering, now, how am I going to be able to survive? It's almost as if, we throw ourselves in the middle of the ocean with no life jackets. But the truth of the matter is, we have the ability to save ourselves as long as we come back around to the basics. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's trust what we are really and truly feeling in the moment and get clear on our intentions. And if we can do that, well, then all of a sudden, not only do we have life jackets, but we've got a giant boat that's loaded with everything that we need. And we're able to sail wherever the heck it is that we want to sail in the world. And we can do it knowing that we can dock at any time, we can leave at any time, and we're not relying on somebody else to provide our needs. But the other part of all of this is that we trust ourselves, because, as you mentioned, oftentimes that codependent behavior is like gaslighting. And we can get really good at gaslighting ourselves, especially if we've grown up in an environment where gaslighting yourself is encouraged. And I'm very glad that you mentioned that, because this weekend I've set aside the entire weekend to work on my next book, which is called What Color Is My Shirt? And it's about trusting your emotions. Because how often have you told someone how you felt and their response was, you shouldn't feel that way?
Yeah.
Well, that's just like saying to somebody, this blue shirt is really red. It's exactly the same thing. So how often have we been taught, either societally, generationally, culturally, the list goes on, have we been taught to gaslight ourselves? And that's a whole nother discussion. And I am so excited that you brought it up. Oh my goodness, the wheels.
I mean, and it really is, yeah. I think that we're in similar places where we're looking at, not just one side of the programming, like, familial or our own stuff. We're looking at it, okay, in clinical psych, it's called the biopsychosocial cultural model, sociocultural model. And we're literally looking at genetics, the, ancestral epigenetic piece that is passed down. And then we're looking at like our own biology, our like brain chemistry, and like, how does that work? Did we grow up in a really, really dangerous environment? And are we running cortisol and adrenaline all the time now? Are we like highly anxious? And can we still find love there for ourselves? And it's like we're looking at this way of how we became self. And I think that it's so important to really like sit back, like that self-empathy piece is like, sit back and be like, maybe, where did this come from? You don't have to find the answer. Where did this come from? And can I love that place there too? Like child like child reparenting stuff and, you know, like meeting your inner child and things like that. I think that's also just incredibly important. The other day I was doing some research. I'll just tell you like a personal story. I was doing some research about ADHD. So neither of my parents have ADHD or any like disorders of any kind. Most of these things are pretty heritable. So it's a lot of the time people who have ADHD, their parents have ADHD or ADD. And I was sitting there thinking about it and I looked it up one day and I think I was 2.5 months premature. And we've all been kind of looking at like, you know, my clinicians and, you know, my therapist, we've all been kind of looking until one day I was like sitting in class. It's this class, right? And I'm like, what brain part is developing in the 3rd trimester? Because I missed that. I missed a whole trimester almost. I got like, you know.
And I get it. My 2nd child was born a month early. I get it.
Yeah. So of course there's these things that show up. It doesn't make us any bad or wrong. It makes us like we have superpowers in different ways, and everybody has their quirky, weird little superpower. And that's the things that, you know, when you're like sitting with your friends, Leslie, or when you're sitting with yourself, or when you're sitting with your children, or, you know, and you're like, yeah, you may not be able to do that thing that society tells you to do. You know, actually, most people can't. And that's okay. But you know what you do got? You got this really, the way that you nerd out on and finding those things for yourself. Like y'all, you gotta talk nicely to yourself. Oh, and I also, okay, this is the one thing I really wanted to bring in, is that when you start really checking your agenda and being honest, and when you're really like giving yourself validation and you're taking care of yourself and you're being kind and you're being like protective, the things that change in your life are profound. And you also like your standards of behavior that you're willing to tolerate, not only from yourself, but from other people, radically shift. And then you're like, you may lose a lot of friends because you're like, I don't want to be treated like that. I'm just going to manage my proximity to you. Like, you know, but what happens is that you become the person that you magnetize to you. And your life gets better because you're not hanging out with assholes. Because you're not an asshole.
When I went on this journey, I didn't tell anybody what I was doing because I didn't want it to hear anybody. I didn't want to hear their comments. I didn't want to hear anything from anyone. And about 4 or 5 months into the journey, my husband says, you know, I don't know what's going on, but something's different and I'm not really sure if I like it.
Oh.
And I just smiled and went on about whatever the heck it was that I was doing in the moment. But what it said to me is I can take care of myself. I can prioritize myself. I can determine what behavior as you mentioned, what behavior I will and will not accept. I can also be in charge of my reaction to other people's behavior. I can make certain that I'm taking care of myself so that it's lining up with where I wish to be. And then I recognized that people around me have 2 choices. They can either change, shift, adjust so that they're lining up with the way that I'm choosing to live my life, or they can move themselves off to Pluto, and only occasionally will I pass them as I orbit past. But remember, I'm only in charge of me. I'm not in charge of them. So what they choose to do is on them, because I'm clear with what I want to do and who I want to be. And I prefer loving myself, making sure that I am clear on what behavior I will and will not accept, how I will allow and not allow someone to speak to me or about me, including myself.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I am clear in stating my needs in I statements and not you statements. And then I'm focusing on behavior and not people.
Yes.
So as long as I'm doing all of that, well, then I'm maintaining and honoring my own self, my own boundaries. I can love myself and say at the end of the day, you know what? I did the best I could today. I made sure that I'm honoring me. And then they have their choices.
Yes. Well, Leslie, would you like to share a tip or a tool with our listeners and viewers? I know you've already shared so much.
The number one thing that I would like everyone to take away from this is, in this moment, you are enough exactly as you are. And if you don't believe it for yourself, I will believe it for you until you're able to believe it for yourself.
That we all need an advocate in our lives, I think. And until we can be our own advocate, it's nice to have friends like Dawn, or a coach, or a therapist. Dawn's been my advocate for a very long time, like Holden Point, when I couldn't do that for myself.
We advocate for each other in such a beautiful way. And all of the whole conversation, I'm sorry I had to step away. I had an unexpected visitor at my home, but what I was about to say was, it's really like the deeper conversation I hear going on is really moving and being centered from a place of making self-honoring choices at every second of the pace, every breath. Like, is this self-honoring? Is this loving? Is this kind? Am I engaging in ways that are supportive and loving towards myself and everyone around me? And is my self-talk aligned in that way? It's just like, the more you lean into this conversation, I'm just speaking for our viewers, and this has been a long journey for myself, breaking the chain of abuse, all the things I've been through in my life. And our viewers have heard my story before for a long time. But yeah, it comes down to making self-honoring choices. And that comes with every area of life, not just one or two. It's like every single area. You're cleaning the spiritual line in your life through making self-honoring choices. That's like, our karma is connected to, our heart. And we have these beautiful opportunities that surface through our loved ones and our beloveds and our relationships. And it can be in all kinds of areas. And so we have to really lean in and allow the emotional material to surface, be with it, be in the heart of love with what's surfacing, and recenter. And like, we can make self-honoring choices around our next choice, our next steps, and really clean and clear that karmic line so that we are evolving and becoming the better version of ourselves we are blueprinted to do. Right? We're blueprinted in this way. We come with a soul blueprint in a way. Like, all right, you're going to choose this family, you're going to get imprinted in this way, your purpose is this, your life theme is this, and every soul has this on some level. You choose it before you even arrive. And so, and that's the beautiful thing. It's like, when we meet those people in our life, and everyone has these friends, loved ones, beloveds, where it's like, gosh, I feel like I've known you eons, and that's because you probably have. You probably have incarnated with that soul over. And I'm a firm believer in incarnation. You don't have to be, but I am. I have had a cat prove it to me, and many other things. And so, I literally have a reincarnating cat in my life. He's reincarnated many times, looks the same personality, same question mark kit. It's just unbelievable, because it's not like I'm seeking him out, but it was proving it to me in my questioning years, in my younger years. But yeah, it's like, you probably have known that person, and that's why it's so kismet and so in sync and so like beloved and deep honoring, right? Because there's no real nothing to clear and clean. Your confidants, your allies in this lifetime. But then there's the people that play the role for our awakening, and they're maybe the deemed like the one that's crazy, or the one that's a narcissist, or the one that's a abuser, or the one that like the stuff that we have to actually choose, like, actually, no, that's not working for me, that's not loving, that's not kind. And those people are a part of us too, even though we might not want to own that or see it, but they're God too. They're a part of us too. We're sharing in it together, and they're playing a role for our awakening. And so, wow, mind blown, right? Oh my gosh. Like, I'll speak about my father. My father was my role for my awakening in this lifetime. I chose to incarnate in the family with him, and he was my abuser. I spent my whole life up until now, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm integrating at a whole different level now. And like, I'm so praise God that I had the awareness to figure it out in this lifetime and to do it, to do the inner work around it. But boy, did that inner work take me much, much longer than I ever thought. And it's because I just had to stay diligent, 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 keep going, no matter what. No matter the outer circumstances were stacking against me, and boy, was it stacking for a long, long time. It was like stacker, 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 stacker. And when I mean stacker, it's like when it rains, it pours. You know, you have a flat tire and the person's crappy to you, and you go here and it doesn't work out. And it's just like stack, 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 right? And we all have that. We're humaning in that reality together. You know, and so those stackers are your opportunity. The soul is saying, how can you handle this? Are you going to do it differently? Are you going to show up for yourself differently? Are you going to make new choices within the same feeling imprinted trauma situation? Are you going to choose yourself? Are you going to make higher elevation conscious choices? Are you going to hear your soul's whisper and choose yourself over the outer circumstances saying, don't do it? Right? And like every person on this planet has that going on. Maybe look totally different. It might be about business and money and owning the company and all the drama and trauma and whatever entanglement, right? And it might be like completely being a staying-at-home wife with an abusive husband. You know, it could be completely different paradigms, but the soul is learning. And that's what we're here for, is the soul learning, and to learn about what we took embodiment to learn for, you know? And so, you know, no one's exempt from the beautiful, beautiful opportunities that take place on a soul level. And I love that you bring all this forward in your conversation, and empathy and loving, deep self-honoring and loving. It's beautiful to hear your journey, and beautiful to see your awakening through it, and that you've written a book to serve others in this. And I just celebrate your growth.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I went on a little tangent, but I felt like I had to flip up.
You're muted.
Ha! The power of self-love, and the power of, really though, you know, when you really commit. Okay, let me walk it back. Take all of these thoughts and put them into one thing. Whew. Turn it up. When you really see how the impact of self-loathing, of self-criticism, like when you really see the impact of how it like what it touches in your life, the way that self-love can shift everything. Like and what we're not talking about is like, you know, getting your nails done and like, you know, face mask. I mean, it's like that, do that too, because you'll need those things, you know, eat good foods. But it's about truly seeing yourself as a lovable, worthy person that has all the things that they need it to be a healthy, happy human in this crazy life, you know. And I would suggest that if there's things that you don't love about yourself, maybe it's capitalism. Maybe it's stuff that you don't actually like. You don't. It's not the most humane system we live in. Okay, I'm just saying that. But you know, but like now that I look back, and we're also not saying like, oh, you have to love yourself to be loved by others. That's not what we're saying. Like, you can be loved. You are worthy of love, dignity, and respect just for existing, just as you are right now. And when you look back and you actually take that in to yourself, I am worthy of love, dignity, and respect just for existing. right now. I don't have to do anything. There's not an action I have to do. It's just me as is. Like when you actually get there and you look back on like, oh, wow, that self-criticism and that self-loathing and the beliefs that were impressed on me, those weren't me.
Mhm.
And now I'm free. And anxiety reduces and your friends get better and you get to have cool conversations with amazing people from all over the world, including Texas. And you got this like Texas connection. Like literally there's a Texas connection. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know, not yet. But you get to show up unabashed yourself.
Mhm.
There is one thing that happens, and I don't know if you've also experienced this, but a lot of times people find you intimidating as well.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you also just don't care what other people think. You're like, okay, thanks for self-selecting out. I don't need your shitty opinion about me. I know that I am the worst person and the coolest person. Because it's human.
But it also magnetizes the people that are meant to be in your field, and that's what's epic about it.
Yeah. So just being an advocate for your own self-love.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know more about Leslie, like really,
Oh,
Muted.
ha, because I was wrong box. If you want to learn more about Leslie Davis and how her work can nurture you, go to www.youcan'teatlove.com and check out everything that she's got on there, including her book. Because there's no doubt that your book has nuggets that are easy to follow in the self-love journey. Because, if there's 3 of us right here talking to you about self-love and we've done it, you can too. You want to share more about what they can find on your website?
On the website, they can find out anything they want to know about me, including my books and my latest book that came out in October, which is The Journey from Failing to Healing. And it's the backstory to You Can't Eat Love.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if they want to ask a question, they can reach out to me from the website. And it's really me that answers. I've had people say, "Are you a real person?" Yes, I'm a real person. But truthfully, the easiest way to find out anything about me, to reach out to me, to find out where all the books are, is the website, You Can't Eat Love. And I love to talk to people. I do love to talk to people. And I love to hear about where you are on your journey. I don't have all the answers. I just have my answers. I talk in crazy stories because, hey, that's the way I talk. 20 plus years of commercial insurance and trying to make sure that non-English speaking contractors understand. I guess that, honed my storytelling skills. So that's the way I talk. And if you read the book, but you've heard me talking, people have told me that reading the book is just as if they were sitting down having a cup of coffee with me and they can feel me being right there. So it's not like it's 2 different people.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, you're on mute, babe.
I know. I'm working it out. I muted myself, trying to unmute myself. After all of this time on like video and Zoom, you'd think that it would just be
Work in progress. Give yourself grace. It's work in progress.
Exactly.
okay. There's other things in my brain. I don't have to remember that. And you know what? There are no such thing as mistakes. I don't know if anyone got that universe email today or last night about like making mistakes. I'll find it for you in a minute. But it really is just like that. Just that's the model right there that you heard is like, hey, wait, mistakes are easy. It's fine. And what does that mean? So I really think that I do also want to like caveat this a little, because what we've done here with self-love and what we're advocates for, it's not easy work, right? So it's not
It is not for the faint of heart.
No. You don't get to just put a Band-Aid on it. You actually have to look at the like sad things about the world. You've got to look about and really like accept yourself for the things that you don't love. You can change those things, or you can just sit with that and be like, well, I've got a mole on my whatever, or I've got weird toes, and they're my toes. So I get to love those toes, you know? And it could be anything from the way you grew up to a body thing, to a mind thing, to a disorder thing, to a diagnosis. Like it really is some of the hardest work you'll do, but some of the most freeing work you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna ask you both a question before we meander. Is you probably had a different idea of what freedom looked like before you found center with yourself. And I'm curious what freedom looks like now.
I can answer. Are you ready to go, Leslie? Or you
No,
want
go ahead.
freedom for me before I did all this work and really like was clear about what the real issues with my dad really were and like came to like really lay it down and love it all. It was really like I had this focused outward perspective around what freedom was. It was like outwardly, I thought I would be able to, travel, and it was more outward focused instead of inner landscape focused. And now my relationship with myself as I do anything is my focus. And I want to make sure that I feel freedom inside and feel, because the circumstances in life you can't control. Like that sometimes life gives us a very limiting situation. Even if you're, doing good work in the world and a good person, like it just life comes in all shapes and sizes and does wild things sometimes. And so it's really about, for me, it came home to like I can be with it no matter what it is, and I can meet it with love, and I can give myself grace, and I can be in grace, be in spirit's grace no matter what. And that is knowing that I have all the inner resources and tools necessary to handle my circumstances. Doesn't mean that I have to like it. I can still dislike it and have my feelings about it, but I can work my process because I have tools. And that is freedom. That's freedom. Because I'm going to get through it.
That's pretty powerful. For me, freedom today means that the only person I need to worry about honoring is myself. And the reason that that is important is because I am surrounded, just as I'm sure there are other people listening who are surrounded by people who don't believe in what I do and the things that excite me. And it used to be that I worried about bending my dreams, desires, wishes to comply with what would make them happy. Now, I don't run around not making them happy. However, I accept that what they value, what excites them, is what excites them. I will continue doing the work that excites me. I will continue putting out the words that are piled up in my head, screaming to come out onto a piece of paper. I will continue doing that as long as I have words piling up in my head. And I don't need any of them to believe in what I'm doing. And that's very, very liberating, because 13 books in, they don't believe in what I do. And you know what? It's okay. It is okay. So I'm saying to the people out there who are listening, if you're not surrounded by people who do not believe in you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Believe in yourself. The only person who needs to believe in you is you.
You.
And,
Beautiful.
and I dare y'all to be bat poo crazy. I dare you. Like live as though, like, just be a little unhinged with how you want to live your life. I mean, who's going to stop you? I mean, again, don't hurt anyone. Don't hurt yourself. You know, like
Have a moral compass.
yeah. I mean, it's yours, but it's like that. Yeah. So I've been playing with this thing recently. You've seen the shirt or the saying that says like, walk with the confidence of a mediocre white man. Man, it's a really, really, really interesting. It's a really interesting mask to wear for some moments, and I'm like, wow, the doors that open for me are just so wild, and it's a little unhinged because I'm like, if you don't believe that there's any limitations, if you act as though there's no limitations for you, there aren't any limitations. Act as though your dreams are true. I love your freedoms. And I think that when we find freedom for ourselves, it really comes from being able to be authentic, to be living in our integrity, and to really just be. I don't have to contort for your love. We can just have a conversation for an hour, honor each other's time, and have literally the best time. So thank you both for your time and energy today. And Leslie, thank you for being such an advocate, for being your own best friend, and being an advocate for doing the work. Dawn, thank you for always showing up every week. Amazing. Yeah, big shout out to Roy and Russell, our team, for just making all of this happen all the time, because they make our lives work and they make sure that Leslie has everything that she needs. So I also want to thank Love Coach Academy, Global Peace Tribe, and Scott Thomas for being our muses. And thank you all for showing up every week for your self-love. And we'll see you same time, same place next week.